Hello, Misfits, and welcome! In today's video, we are reading some RPG horror stories, and I will be reacting to them and giving you some of my own thoughts and opinions. I have not read through any of these stories, I've only skimmed the titles, so let's see what we're dealing with today. Alright, for this first one, we have Half the Party Misses the final session of a 3-year campaign. Off the bat, that sounds pretty bad. I guess my biggest question before even reading the story is like, why not reschedule the final session? Like, what is causing half the party to miss? Is there really no other time we can get them back at the table to finish this game? I'm very curious about that, so let's see what we're dealing with. Alright, I, the GM, run a game of D&D that went from level 1 to level 17 for a little over 3 years. The plan was to play until level 20, but we ended up needing to speed up the ending before I left for college. I spent a long time working out how I could reconnect each player's backstory to the final fight, and in the 2 sessions leading up to the final session, a large majority of my players showed up late enough to delay the game by 2 hours. It's a pretty significant delay. A month before the final session, I found a day that worked for everybody and reminded them twice a week to keep that day completely open because we would be playing until we finished. This is, I feel like some of this is striking a chord. Come time for the final session, 2 of my 6 players show up an hour and a half late. I didn't want to start the final stretch without them, so we waited until they got there to play. Their goal was to get through the villain's fortress and confront him before he started a ritual that would end the world. For the sake of time, I had to remove many of the puzzles and fights leading up to the villain, and they made it to his lair in about 2 hours. This was originally meant to be a multiple session dungeon that I had prepared, so all things considered, it was very fast. 30 minutes into the final fight, 2 of my players, both of the ones who were late and delayed the game, brought up random obligations that they hadn't mentioned before and abruptly left the game. Shortly after, another player left as well. At this point, what is now half of the party is trying to beat the second and third phases of this final fight meant to be difficult for 6 level 17 players. I didn't want to punish these players for their comrades leaving, so I modified the fight on the spot to remove the third phase. 2 of these were also first-time players, one of whom was my younger brother in 6th grade, who honestly played pretty well given his age and experience. Wow, 6th grader. And I really didn't want their first campaign to end in defeat. After they won, I also had to modify the epilogue I had prepared because it had tied in most of the backstories of the players who left the session. Those who remained still seemed to have fun, and we're all still friends, but suffice to say, I'm now running with a different group of players. Interesting. Super interesting. I guess, like, for this one, if you've got players that struggle to show up on time, and it seems like this has happened more than once. I mean, he says, like, leading up to it, like, the session before the last one, they were really, really late. Then, too, maybe you need to tell them a different start time if you're expecting them to show up late. Or, like, you know, check with them the day of. It's like, hey, are you going to be on time or are you going to be delayed? Or you could even consider having other people come in to, like, sub for those players and, like, replace them. It's tough because, like, you don't want to, like, kick them out of the game for that, but I don't know. If they're not going to be able to be committed and show up and, like, be a participating part of the table, then maybe you need to find people that are. Like, maybe that's part of the... Maybe that's what needs to happen. I hate this. I recall in the early days for my table, we did not have, like, a set day and time that we would play. It really just was like, we just took it week by week, and it's like, hey, I'm available on this day in this month. Who else is? And we would go by that to figure out when we could play. And we'd always figure out a date that worked, but then once that date rolled around to actually happening, that's when people would forget that the game was happening. They'd forget, to schedule around that day, that time, and there were always a lot of last-minute cancellations, and it would often result in the full session being canceled, and it was, like, a big deal. It was to the point where, like, we had to, like, sit down as a table and talk about, like, not doing that anymore and picking, like, a set day and time that we would always play at so that, the story could continue, and stuff like that. And this sounds like they needed that. They needed something that people can, always remember is happening and can, like, schedule around and work around. That's it sounds like they needed that pretty badly. But it also sounds like, these are kids in high school, they're getting ready to go to college. It's tough to work around schedules, I feel like, at that age group. They've got a lot of extra, things they're involved in. When I'm thinking of, like, I'm a teacher, so I'm thinking of my own students, and, like, a lot of them are involved in a bunch of different things, and sometimes their schedules are at the whims of their family, more so than themselves, so I'm sure that was a factor. It sounds like this DM did all the right things, though. They did some modifications on the fly, they cut out stuff that just wasn't going to work anymore, and that's what you have to do as a GM, as a DM. Sometimes you just don't have the time that you need to tell the story that you want to tell, and you gotta make some cuts on the fly. I've certainly had to do that before, and then sometimes you just know that, like, this isn't balanced anymore, and so you've got to adjust the final boss and how difficult things are going to be, just so that everybody's able to, like, enjoy the game. Because if you're not going to have somebody come in and sub for those missing players, you cannot run the combat as is. It's no longer balanced, and it would have probably wiped the party. It sounds like they did all the right things. They're just dealing with some communication issues and just some commitment issues as well. So I hate that for them, but it sounds like they did a pretty decent job managing this situation. This one's really short. This one is, that time I was killed by a healing item. That title confused me, so I had to click on the story so I could see exactly what was going on. Alright, so this person says that I'm just retelling this story and remembered that this subreddit exists, so here we go. This happened way back in the day. I was probably only 16 or 17. My group was the DM, me, and one other player. That's very small. We were playing 3.5, and the rules of the system are a bit foggy now. I'm not sure whether this was a homebrew or the actual rules, but either way, we were playing with the rules that if you were down, you lost a hit point every round due to bleeding, and if you hit -10, you died. My character went down by being struck in the throat, and so he ruled that I was losing 3 hit points each round. When combat ended, the other player tried to save me by putting a handful of good berries in my mouth. The DM had him roll an intelligence check. I will be on my deathbed remembering that he rolled a 4. That 4 is seared into my brain, as is the exact dialogue that followed. DM went, "Yeah, looks fine," and went about describing the loot that he was getting. After about a minute, he said, "Oh, by the way, you're dead." Obviously, I was surprised and went, "What? Why?" Very calmly, he explained that he didn't roll well enough to know that I couldn't swallow, and so I choked to death. This remains the only time in my nearly 3 decades of playing D&D that I have rage quit a table. I would rage quit too. That's absurd. I've never heard of anybody ruling good berries in that way, so that's kind of crazy. Like, oh, you're unconscious, you can't chew, so you choked on the good berries that are meant to heal you and you died. That's crazy. That's, like, honestly insane. So that's a bad DM. That is a bad DM for sure. Ooh, I guess, like, you just gotta, yeah. I would rage quit that table as well. I would go find a different table to play with, and that sounds like the thing to do. The OP replied and said, "The most horrible part of the story is that I continued playing at his table for the next decade before I realized he was like this all the time." Yeah, no, I could not. I could not play at a table with a DM like that. That would drive me absolutely insane. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. No, no, no. All right. This one sounded interesting. The DM disbanded the campaign overnight to avoid confrontation. I hate confrontation. I really, really do. And I think a past version of myself would do this. Would, like, not necessarily disband the group, but, like, you know, maybe burn a bridge and ruin a friendship just to avoid confrontation. But these days, like, it's just important to know that communication's gonna solve things. So, when in doubt, talk it out, and that's kind of my rule of thumb these days. Plus, I just like the game way too much to just disband a campaign just because I can't talk to somebody. So, I'll be interested to see what this story's about. All right. Considering most of the stories in this sub, it's a really mild anecdote, but still annoys me to this day. I've been looking for a group to play in as a PC in Roll20, since I'm a DM in a group of friends and no one wants to take a shot at it. I feel that. I found one which had a schedule that worked for me. I talked to the DM a bit and joined the group. You could tell the DM had a preference for the RP/narrative aspect of D&D because he had a massive homebrew world with kingdoms and deities and everything. During session 0, we had the 5 players worked in the backstories with the world and everything was good to go. Session 1 was extremely fun. We had a bit of combat, but most of the session was RP. The DM planting seeds for everyone's backstory to develop. Session 2 is where everything went to shit, though. Uh-oh. We were traveling on a ship that eventually got struck and started to sink. While this was happening, another player and me were chasing down one of the attackers through the cargo hold in order to question him. Eventually, we lost sight of him as the cargo was now flooding quickly and everything was pitch dark. Uh-oh. Being a human paladin in heavy armor with no dark vision was rough at the time. That's why I had tied down a rope to an anchor point before going into the cargo hold and casted light on myself just in case. Okay, very smart, very smart. The DM asked us if we wanted to try to escape. I said yes and started to swim using the rope as a guide. He made me do some saves, no big stuff considering the situation I was in. It made sense. Great, that seems totally normal. Then he asked the warlock to do the same. I feel like this is where the problems come up. He told the DM that he would use Misty Step to get out. Because he only needed vision. He was an Eladrin, I believe. So he had a few casts of it plus dark vision, but the DM wouldn't have it. He wanted him to do saves as well because of the narrative. The warlock player argued that it doesn't make sense in this situation because his character's reaction would be to try to use his magic to escape, not swim, especially when strength was his dump stat. Honestly, I do agree. I mean, if I had Misty Step, I would probably be using that. If I had Misty Step and I knew that I was weak, I would be using Misty Step to get out of this situation. And if I have Dark Vision, then I have some limited sight, so I'm going to use that to get out of this situation. After a somewhat heated argument, the DM relented and allowed him to escape using Misty Step, but you could tell the mood was ruined. Shortly after we escaped, the DM called it early because he was tired. It was understandable. We played at night, like 1 a.m. or so, plus the argument would take a toll on anyone. The issue was me, being a night owl, was still awake at 3 a.m. when he sent a heartfelt message through our WhatsApp group, saying that he would step down as a DM because of style differences, but he didn't want to break up the group. We knew each other for 5 hours at most. There was no group, just 6 random dudes playing together over Discord immediately after he left the group. Weird. I couldn't help it but laugh at the spineless move. The next morning, everyone saw the message, so the campaign was dead. Still, I wanted to say my piece to this guy, so I talked to him privately and told him that what he had done was a bitch move. The issue could have been resolved as adults with some talking. He couldn't care less. He ignored the message altogether and responded that he would like me to join him in another table because he enjoyed my RP. I didn't even bother to answer him. F that guy. Man, that's frustrating because it sounds like this guy is a decent DM, but his problem is he got too hung up on, things needing to play out the way he had, figured it in his mind. And so when somebody else presented a different way of solving the problem that he gave them, he wasn't having it. And he didn't like giving up, his idea of how it was supposed to play out, or like his control over how it was supposed to play out. And if you are unable to throw everything you have planned out the window and just go with what the players come up with, like if you can't do that, then being a dungeon master might be difficult for you, because like that's a big, big part of it. There are so many things that like I have in my mind is like, all right, this is how this should play out. Or, if I were writing a novel, this is how I would end the story. I know that it's never going to come out that way. I know that when the players come to the table, everything I have planned might go out the window, and I need to be able to work on the fly to, handle what they're throwing at me. And honestly, with each passing year, more and more, I don't have solutions to puzzles. Like, I will, create a puzzle or a riddle or a problem, but I won't have a solution in mind. And then I will just see what the players come up with or talk about or brainstorm. And I will use that as, the inspiration for what the solution could or should be. Because they're going to come up with something that's way more satisfying to them. Normally, 9 times out of 10. Interesting. Yeah, just talk it out. Just talk it out. When stuff like this happens, also, they finished the session. There's a little spat mid-session, then they carried on and then ended. And then he was so upset by that he just ended the whole campaign. 2 sessions happened. That's crazy. All right, let's do one more. I saw one with a very wild title, so let's do that one. Okay. Drunk cop threatens to arrest DM. Yeah, I saw this title and I could not ignore it, so we're gonna read this one. And I think it is a bit long, so buckle up. This happened at a game shop in the city. Generally, I played D&D with a fairly nice community. The DM has been running games for our group, plus other players in the game shop who come in and out of games for years now. One of these transient players, as I will refer to him, happened to be a cop. He had been coming to the game shop for a few months by this point and was chill with the DM. He ended up joining our table and rolling up a drow wizard. Now, this guy had a drinking problem and would often show up buzzed, or he would straight up bring beer or whiskey, which was technically against the rules, but the employees never really enforced the no alcohol rule. This is already a problem. There are a lot of tables that just flat out don't allow drinking at their table, and it's a shame that that's a rule that's needs to be enforced for some tables. But if it needs to be enforced, it needs to be enforced. Whatever helps the table run smoothly and helps everybody get along better, that's what needs to happen. All right, let's see where this goes. I have a feeling it's gonna be bad. Alright, this led to his character being a bit chaotic stupid. Be it him getting involved in edgelord murder hobo antics, missing important information because he's not paying attention or can't pay attention, talking over other players, going on random rants that have nothing to do with the game, etc. When he got too drunk, we would just ignore him as much as possible, but he did get himself killed on this one mountain where our goal was to cross a chasm. He was particularly sloshed that day and decided to use a 3rd level fly spell to cross a big chasm filled with enemy archers and evil birds. We all had previously decided to cross via the cave system. There was zero chance he was going to make it, and the DM said, "Your character feels the cold, ethereal embrace of death as he considers what he is about to do." That's basically the DM saying, "Hey man, don't do this." And then out of game says, "Are you sure you want to do this?" Yeah, that is DM speak for please don't do it. Ugh, and the cop says, "Yes, let me fly across it, goddammit. Y'all are y'all are just pansies." He did not say pansies. And so he did. The DM had him roll acrobatics to see how well he could evade the attacks to avoid an encounter that would almost certainly lead to him falling to his death. He ended up encountering a gang of Aarakocra and rocks about a third of the way across the chasm, and we were way too far away to help him. The encounter was brutal, and he was downed. Fell from a height of 4,000 feet and died instantly. This dude. After a few seconds, it finally dawned on him that this wasn't a roll for death saves or wait for the party to heal you type of death. He was dead. He said, "What the hell, man? I was going to make it." "No, you weren't. You were not going to make it. You were not going to make it." And also "Oh, I fell 4,000 feet and I don't get to roll a death save." No, man. No. That's too far a fall. You would die. Oh, man. DM said, "No, you most certainly would not. Even if you passed that agility check and avoided the encounter, there were several points in which you would have had to pass. It was practically impossible." The player then said, "Oh, I see. You just wanted to kill me off, and for what? You got a problem with me or something? You know I'm a cop, right? I could have you arrested, bucko, and trust me, you would not last a day in prison." The DM kind of froze at this drunk idiot threatening him over a D&D game. Thankfully, one of the other players wasn't having it and said, "Do it then. In fact, take us all down to the station. Drunkenly, drive your beat-up car down to the police station and explain to your boss that the DM is under arrest for the high crime of having pretend birdmen roll dice to kill off your pretend dark elf." He then got up and stormed out while cussing the DM out and ranting about how stupid the game was and how he was never going to play D&D again. We never did see him back in the store after that. Good grief. That's... honestly, it's a little scary that person is a cop. They have that significant of a drinking problem, and it affects their personality and their behavior so much, and to the point where they do legitimately threaten people with their authority. That's pretty terrifying. I think the DM did everything that they could, honestly. They really tried. They're like, "You really sure you want to do this?" Look, when the DM says, "Are you really sure you want to do this?" That's typically code for, this has a high probability of ending badly. So, really think about it. It doesn't necessarily always mean that, but sometimes I'm like, "Are you doing this?" Because I just need to know for sure if they are. But most of the time, it's not a good thing to hear the DM say that. And and this guy was like, "You're just trying to kill me." It's like, there's a totally other different route, different way of getting around this area that wasn't super deadly. You just decided you really had to do this. Man, that's crazy. That is just... don't be a jerk. And, if drinking really affects you and, how you behave, and you're gonna do something where you have to, collaborate and work with a bunch of other people, then, don't drink while you do that, Don't drink while you play D&D if it's going to affect how helpful or hurtful you are. Period. Done. I'm going to throw one extra one in there. because it made me chuckle a little bit. How many times is too many times to have to remind people to send me their character sheets? Hard relate to this. Sometimes it takes me a long time to get them from all of my players. Admittedly, I have a large table, and the more people that you have at your table, the more difficult it is to get the things you need in the time that you need them. So I've got a lot of grace about it, but I totally understand the frustration of asking for character sheets and not receiving them in a timely manner. Alright, so this person says, I'm running a Vampire the Masquerade one-shot, in theory. It's my first time GMing for multiple people. Everyone's been given what I thought were all the resources to make their character, including a sheet generator link and a couple links to easy character reference, stuff, like pictures and stuff. Every allowed clan, merit, and flaw has been listed, as has every banned one. I first advertised this in one server several weeks in advance, then cross-posted to a bigger one. Not smart, I know. I've asked people to message me their sheets and post character name, reference pictures in my server. I have answered any questions, even ones already in my FAQ section. Wow, they've put in a lot of work. So about a week into the setup, I pinged everybody to please get back to me if they're still interested and send me their stuff. And anyone who didn't get back to me at all would be removed, with a specific time by which to at least express continued interest. 3 of my players got back to me fine. I removed the one who didn't, then reposted my ad, got another hit, let them in. They got back to me, and we managed to work something out. Now, I'm still here waiting for 3 of my 4 players to send me an actual character sheet. I've offered to move the dates around to something that suits people. I know people are busy and we're all adults and scheduling sucks. We're 3 days out from the actual agreed upon game day and it's got really old fast. Plus, I feel a little hurt that they didn't even bother sending me anything. I know people forget stuff. I know people are busy. I understand time zones and scheduling are a curse. Yeah, so this is now everyone pings. We picked a date that people seem to be fine with. Would I be wrong to move the date or just cancel entirely because people didn't seem to care? I put a lot of effort into this and I feel really bad about it. So here's the thing. There's stuff that you can ask players to do outside of game time, and maybe they'll do it, maybe they won't. And then there's stuff that, like, you absolutely 100% need to have, and you can't continue without it. And, like, having your character sheets is probably one of those things. If you don't know your players well enough, or you don't trust them to be able to handle this task on their own, then you need to have them do it when they are there in front of you. So I regularly will have trouble getting all of the character sheets for my characters. Every time we level up, it's like, all right, I need your updated character sheet. And so what I do is when we all log on to play, I just won't start until everybody has put their character sheet in our shared drive. So if these people haven't sent you your sheet, make this first meeting a session 0 and make them make the character sheet and give it to you on that day when you meet. Or call them up and get it from them privately. You cannot just hey, give me this thing and then wait around and expect for it to happen. Unfortunately, 9 times out of 10, they're not going to do that. You're going to have to either individually reach out to them and harass them about it, or you're going to have to make them do it while you're watching. It's kind of the only thing that can happen. Yeah, it's tough. It's frustrating. What's possibly one of the most frustrating things about being a game master or a dungeon master is a lot of times we feel like we care about the game more than anybody else. We're putting so much work and effort into every aspect and facet of the game. Way more than a lot of the players probably understand. And so it means so much to us, and we're always thinking about it and working on it, and that is just not the case for most players. Like, most players don't, like, have to worry or think about it outside of when they're sitting at the table and reacting to the stuff that we're presenting them. They don't have to do that. And so it doesn't mean that they don't enjoy the game. It doesn't mean that they don't appreciate you, but like, they have a different role, and it's just different. It's just going to be a different level of like attention and care. And you just can't depend on them to do all this stuff on their own time. Like, sometimes you have to do some hand holding to get what you need to happen done. And that's just part of it. And like, take it from a teacher, you know, if I assign homework, I know that I will not get that back from everybody. It will never happen. There will always be a significant portion of the class that won't do it, or if they do it, I'll get it late. Whereas if we do a classroom assignment, an in-class assignment, and I'm walking around and watching everybody do it and helping them with the assignment as it's happening, it's going to get done for every single person. Like, that's the difference here. So if you really can't get these character sheets from these people, then you need to wait till they show up for the session and get it from them then. You need to call them up personally and like, hey, I need this now. You need to do this and send this to me while you're on the phone with me. You need to go knock on their door and go find them and get it from them. Like, you need to do whatever you need to be a little bit more hands-on to get what you need from those players. You just can't really like wait around and depend on it. And like, yeah, you could cancel the game or you could kick those players out, but is that helping you? Like, if you really want to play the game, then canceling it only hurts you, you know? Now you're punishing yourself because these other people, didn't do this thing in the time frame you gave them. You could kick those people out and just play with, like, the person that's given you the character sheet, but that's a lot of work for you to build a story and a campaign around, like, a single player or two players instead of a group. Like, that's a lot more work for you. So, sometimes the stuff that it's like, well, if this doesn't happen, then I'm gonna do this is a consequence. Like, sometimes those consequences are only hurting the GM. They're not actually really hurting the players because they don't have the same level of care. So, think about it. Think about it before you go to the extreme. I would just, I'd keep the date the same, have these people arrive, and the ones that didn't have the character sheet done, I just get it from them then. It's like, all right, we're going to start late. We either won't cover as much in this game as I thought, or we'll play a little longer, just to account for this time taken to get the character sheets. That's what I would do. And I think that's fine. Alright, well, those were some RPG horror stories. We had a mixed bag here. We had a variety of tiers of horror here. But if you enjoyed them, if you enjoyed this channel and want to support me, feel free to like and subscribe. That stuff really helps me out. But more importantly, leave a comment down below. Which story, kind of struck a chord with you the most? Do you have your own horror stories that you have had to deal with? I'd love to hear from you guys. I'd love to hear your opinions and your thoughts. The comments that you leave on the video always help other people find the videos and find this channel, so that's all super important. But with all of that said and done, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, a great rest of your week, and I will see you again next time. I am very excited because I get to be a player in a game soon. Some people in person have thrown together a game and I'm gonna get to join and I'm super pumped about it. I'm gonna come in as a level 5 rogue. Rogue is like my favorite class. It's the first class I ever played as was a rogue thief. So I'm going OG, rogue thief. And I'm super excited. My character, her name is Petty Theft, and I'm very excited to sow some seeds of chaos. I'm going to try to lean more chaotic good than chaotic neutral, because I don't want to be you know, a pain in the butt to everybody else at the table. But I'm super excited. Yeah, I'll let you know how it goes. I don't get to be a player very often, so it should be fun. I think the DM is already a little wary of the fact that I'm going to be a rogue named Petty Theft. I think they're like, you might be chaotic. And I will try to tone it down. I'll try not to be too detrimental to the success of the party. But yeah, should be fun. Should be fun. Yeah. What do you guys play as? What are your favorite classes? I'd love to hear from you. Anyway, have a good day, guys.